Hello and welcome back to the Wandering Cantos. Today we're going to be discussing The Running Man. So there's your little spoiler warning. I also will be discussing The Long Walk. So spoiler warning for The Long Walk as well. Came out, I think a couple months ago now, but wanted to give you that warning. I'll also be discussing a little bit about the books and things like that. So just wanted to give you that fair warning. And yeah, also just wanted to give everyone a reminder that if you're enjoying this type of content, please consider subscribing. But with that said, let's jump right into it. All right, The Running Man. So if you've seen this movie, you probably won't be surprised to hear that I'm a bit lukewarm on this one. I don't feel like it was ever necessarily like bad enough to warrant calling it like a bad film, but there just wasn't anything really going on that was especially good or really like iconic, because sometimes with these sort of actiony, suspenseful thriller movies, there will be like some crazy plot twist or something that you didn't see at all, or like a really well choreographed fight scene or something like that that makes it stand out, that you're gonna go to your friends and say, oh, you've got to check it out. It's a little boring in the beginning, but hang in there, or something like that. And this movie just seemed to really not have any of that stuff. None of the acting was particularly horrible, but none of it was really compelling. And I feel like there were a couple big things that were holding the movie back, though again, weren't so bad that it's like, let's, mock this movie kind of thing. I feel like one of those things was that, like, because like this is going to be a movie all about stakes. The plot's going to be all about stakes, and so as a result, the more you are on the edge of your seat, the better the film will be. And while I did care about the protagonist winning and surviving so he could like take care of his family, it wasn't really compelling, because it's sort of like a bit of a cheap character motivation, because it's like, oh, I think the movie even starts by kind of mocking it, that, oh, did you bring in your little daughter to sort of guilt trip me into caring about you and getting you a job, is what one of the characters says. And it sort of feels like the movie does that, where the reason we're supposed to care about this protagonist is just because he has a daughter. Because while he's shown helping people, it's sort of like he also has like really weird anger management issues that sort of contradict the rest of his personality, so they don't really like blend together. And he's not particularly clever, especially in a way that it feels like, oh, he didn't really do anything that felt like it was smarter than something I feel like anyone in the audience would figure out. Maybe within the world of this film, he was super smart, but I've seen films with much more creative protagonists where it's much more interesting. And then I also felt like in a weird way, the violence like wasn't strong enough, in that it shows some of the other contestants getting eliminated, but the way it's sort of like filmed, it almost feels kind of goofy that they get eliminated, and as a result, you're not like super scared for the protagonist. Because on the other side of things, this is where The Long Walk comes in. I felt like the sort of like gore and violence of The Long Walk was so extreme that it really had you cringing anytime you thought that a contestant might get eliminated, because you knew they were going to go through something horrible, and so you were rooting for them all to just keep going, because the alternative is so nightmarish. While in this one, it just felt kind of goofy, where it almost felt like, well, if he gets eliminated, whatever. It didn't feel like it packed that punch of like, this is there was a finality to it. So in that sense, I found that to be sort of disappointing. His motivations were sort of disappointing, and even like the hunters who were pursuing him, in all of the advertisements, because it was sort of trying to satirize like game shows a little bit, not even a little bit, a lot of it, but they looked goofy and silly, and it kind of felt like they were actually actors rather than like in universe they were actors, rather than like actually like well trained special operatives. And so as a result, you kind of felt like, oh well, the main character is gonna have no problem with them because they probably can't actually aim, and they're probably not actually that physically intimidating because they're probably just like in universe Hollywood, B-list actors or something like that. The plot twist was super obvious, was that the masked guy was the first winner. I mean, I feel like probably everyone saw that coming a mile away. And it was weird because I love Edgar Wright films. And I feel like they're normally so snappy and the music synced up. I mean, I think of Baby Driver and, Hot Fuzz and all of those. It's usually just like really fun, great pacing, things like that. And this just didn't have any of that. It really felt like it didn't feel like an Edgar Wright film. I felt like a lot of just the sort of plot decisions didn't really make sense. Like, why did Michael Cera's character press the alarm that alerted all the cops? I get that it's like, oh, because then he can have a Home Alone moment, but he realized that by doing that, it put the protagonist in such a state that, I mean, Michael's character dies, and then, everything just goes, terribly for the protagonist when things were going all right, and some sacrifices were being made to help get him where he was. So it's just like weird moments like that, and I'm still not fully sure I understand the sort of world building / plot decisions towards the end where Glenn Powell's character thinks he's like figured out the whole, oh, they're just playing roles in a TV show. So like he takes a girl hostage, but then he throws his gun out the window, but like it is actually a death match. So it's not like he figured out that they were all using Nerf guns or laser guns, like it wasn't fake. There was no Hollywood magic. So I don't know why he like got rid of his firearm and sort of had this weird confidence. And then there's this moment when he pulls up and there's a whole crowd behind him cheering him on, and then there's the evil hunters, and Glenn gets a megaphone and he's like, oh well, they want me to play my role, but he weirdly scares off all the people who are cheering him on. But the whole time he's been trying to get the audience on his side so he can get the audience by the end of the film. He sort of creates a revolution through the audience, and they sort of rise up against this sort of oppressive media elite class. And so I don't know why he was like threatening specifically the crowd behind him and scaring them off, saying that he was going to like blow them all up and stuff. I just didn't feel like that made sense. It totally like swayed their opinion of him. Because they were all like, oh, Richard lives, and then they're like, oh wait, never mind. That was weird. And then the only other weird moment is there's this moment where the woman who was taken hostage, they're on this plane, and she goes to jump out of the plane, and the door I think just doesn't open all the way, and she says, oh, this is a sign, I'm supposed to, but then she flies out, and I'm genuinely not sure, did she mean that it was a sign that she's supposed to like stay on the plane and die with Richard, or what? I genuinely have no idea what that was supposed to be implying. So if you guys have any ideas, please feel free to let me know in the comments, because I'm genuinely baffled by that moment. But yeah, the thing is I feel like this is going to become a running theme on this channel, is that I have read and seen a lot of Stephen King media. So like I've read a lot of his books, and I've seen movies and stuff based on his books and his writing. And as a result, I sort of have like a love-hate relationship with him, where I feel like I'm always ultimately sort of disappointed by his books, but since they're sort of easy reads whenever I feel lazy, I'll tend to pick one up, since they usually have pretty crazy premises. So you're like, oh, well, that sounds interesting. A guy goes on a reality TV show, game show, where he's being hunted, sort of like The Most Dangerous Game. That's going to be cool, but then it never sticks to the landing, because when they set it up and they said, well, for each of the hunters and cops you kill, you get extra money, I totally thought we were going to get like a cool John Wick-esque movie where he's being hunted by everyone in the city, but he's really good at fighting, and he realizes that rather than letting them hunt him, he's gonna hunt the hunters and do the whole sort of literally, as I just said, like the hunted becomes the hunter, and the hunter becomes the hunted type thing. But that doesn't happen, because instead it's just sort of this weird, like, I figured out the world building. I figured out, like, their rules. I just feel like Stephen King tends to write the same sort of hokey characters over and over again, which is funny because The Long Walk is also so similar in plot to this one, where it's dystopian future and people have to do this challenge of physicality, and if they can survive, then they get whatever they want. They get their wish, or they get a ton of money, that whole thing. But The Long Walk was like extremely deep, beautiful dialogue, great character piece, character study. Like I said, the tension of the tanks rolling up behind them and knowing the threat, knowing the violence, and also like the visceralness of the violence. It like made you I was on the edge of my seat the entire time. The Running Man, I feel like I could fall asleep during. So really just super disappointed by this film, and in a weird way it was so sort of just planned. I feel like I don't have a whole lot else to say, so I might even wrap this one up here, which is a lot earlier than normal, but just sort of a meh movie. I feel like, this is the correct time to say something is mid. I just felt like it was mid because it wasn't bad enough that it was entertaining, or bad enough that it was like kind of fun leaving the movie and being like, even if, because like I've seen movies that are so bad they're funny, and then I've seen movies that are so bad they're at least fun to discuss afterwards, because you can be like, what went wrong? But with this one, it's just meh. It's not bad enough to have any great commentary, and there's really not a lot of good stuff worth mentioning. So yeah, I think I'm gonna wrap this one up here. I hope you guys enjoyed, kind of sitting down and discussing this movie with me and chatting about it a bit. Like I said, I won't say I had been like looking forward to this movie, because it was sort of just like the only movie that had empty seats since Wicked was so crazy packed. Like at my local theater, like every like theater was totally occupied by Wicked. They were doing like a million showings of it, so this was one of the only other movies that was available. But yeah, let me know in the comments what your thoughts are. If you loved this film, I'd love to hear you defend it. Maybe you could change my opinion. And if you have any idea what was going on with some of those more cryptic moments, I'd be really interested in hearing sort of your thoughts and theories on that. Maybe if you've read the book, you might know via the context of that, because I have not read this book. I had read The Long Walk, and seen the movie, but I didn't know this one existed, to be totally honest with you. So yeah, with that being said, I'm going to sign off. So I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye.